Adversity is the mother of opportunities, and tough times are our best teachers. It is at such times we need to constantly reinvent ourselves to stay relevant and thrive. In this ever-changing world, evolution and adaptability become very essential to stay in the game. To make this happen, intuition, visualization, and picking up early signs of change are very critical to be future ready. Collaboration is key here, and so is sustainability and profitability. Now, it's time to have a thoughtful discussion and learn from businesses across the globe on how they've begun to make the shift from embracing collaboration and sustainability as an additional consideration when doing business as usual. So let's start talking about rethinking business models so that resilience, profitability, and sustainability are not mutually exclusive. And let's also talk about driving resilience through navigating challenging times and adapting quickly to change. We will also be talking about driving sustainability by reducing carbon footprint, waste, improving working conditions, and transitioning to the circular economy. So what is beyond HR? The need to collaborate and bringing in much needed shift in businesses across the globe. So let's talk about some questions in the context of what does sustainability mean to different organizations? Increasingly, we have seen, even at the board level, a shift to form ESG committees. And we've heard increasingly that corporations are being evaluated more about their ESG practices and the need to do businesses the right way rather than just being profitable. So maybe over to you to hear your views on what it means in the context of your businesses. Could we start with Surani and maybe Dhaval and then Vikas in that order?
Hello, everyone. So actually, for a lot of companies, sustainability was initially all about reporting. It was a topic in our annual report and so on. Not just this crisis, but the recent geopolitical situation as well as the climate change has actually got all of us rethinking about sustainability. For us in Sri Lanka, which is quite heavy towards manufacturing, sustainability of our supply chain has become vital. And more so now than ever, Sri Lankan companies are working towards ensuring the sustainability of our product, our supply chain, and ensuring that we as companies, we as a country can survive this era. So sustainability is no more just a buzzword in an annual report, but I think it is a way of life and vital way of life for our simple survival.
Yeah, I mean, very pertinent thoughts, and I completely, resonate what Surani just shared. So we Piramal, we believe in, and we say that we are in the business of doing good. So what it actually means is that how can we maintain a very fine balance between what we take from our ecosystem and what we give it back, and to what extent we can ensure that we are not disturbing the balance between the different ecosystems that we interact with, right? So it's all about how can you, like you rightly mentioned, why do profitability and sustainability have to be mutually exclusive? Why can't it be a part of the business model itself, where your thought process changes completely and you are sustainable by design or you are sustainable by default, rather than you having to take conscious efforts towards doing it? And I think one of the very important aspects of sustainability, especially when it comes to business or enterprises, is the idea of innovation, because you need to have an eye for the detail and see where you can find scopes to do so much better than what you are doing right now. And it needs concerted efforts from all the organizational elements. And like you rightly mentioned, it is beyond HR now. So, for example, when I am the CIO of the company, and if I am looking at a drive towards paperless organization, I'm directly making my contribution, or my department is directly making my contribution towards the conservation of the environment, which has a manifold effect on the entire ecosystem that we are dealing with right now. So, to me, it is very clearly to what percentage sustainability is contributing to my profitability. That's what how I would look at. And I think when companies are increasingly benchmarking themselves towards taking KPIs, which will tell you as to if your profit is X, what percentage of your profit is coming from sustainable products. And I think that's a very good indicator, and it's time we started rewarding companies for doing that. I think that is very, very important, and that could be a game changer.
Vikas?
Yeah, no, Jaya, absolutely. I agree. I agree with both the panelists. I think sustainability can't be seen in an isolation. So sustainability is not only the sustainability of the ecosystem or the sustainability of the business itself, but it has to be a collective sustainability. A business cannot be making profit forever if it is consistently harming the ecosystem. So while you're focused on profit as a business, you also need to be focused on the ecosystem in which you are operating, whether it is the environmental ecosystem, whether it is the supply chain and the ecosystem of your vendors and so on and so forth. So it is very, very important to see that sustainability as a whole and not as a single unit. And as Dhaval rightly said, the KPIs needs to be set right in terms of how much of your revenues or profits are coming from sustainable products. And even if there are revenues or contributions coming from products which are not so sustainable, how are you kind of investing back into the ecosystem so that you're compensating for that? These are few areas which are very, very important. But I think the most important is because this concept of sustainability will keep on evolving. And what we were thinking 10 years back is not the same definition what we are realizing today. So we need to constantly evolve the definition of sustainability and consistently think how we can improvise our ecosystem and our businesses to make it more and more sustainable.
Maybe just another question on sustainability, looking into the view forward. We've had ISO standards that set how things must be done. And there are like governance and protocols that take it far beyond just metrics, which is more post-mortem. How have you spent? Have you spent enough on sustainable initiatives versus rules or procedures? How do you create a sustainable organization? That has been something that policymakers have been working with. Some of your thoughts on what that is going to look like. Let me tee off with an example. You have this Namami Ganga project, which just said these are standards for waste disposal. And how do you kind of look at certain processes and procedures? It wasn't like a metrics. It wasn't beyond a set of guidelines or standards. And that seemed to meet with pretty good success. So what are your views in terms of policies, procedures? Is that the way forward for looking at sustainability as a norm, as a standard? So some viewpoints from you. And Vikas, since you're on screen, maybe we'll start in the reverse order this time.
No problem. No, I agree, but I think that's something is the mantra of today's government as well. I believe it's less of rules and more of governance, but I think there needs to be a balance between how the framework of rules needs to be set, what policies needs to be rolled out. But at the end of the day, if you're talking about sustainability, if you're talking about impact on the environment or on the ecosystem, I think governance plays a very, very important role. So I would give more weightage to the governance and then less to the rules. Rules are just a guiding principle. But at the end of the day, if you have strong governance, if you have the right internal framework to monitor that how you're measuring the impact of what you're doing on the ecosystem and on your business itself, that's the right way of looking at it.
Thank you. Dhaval?
So I largely agree with Vikas. My only, complementary point to it would be that I think it is a value system that drives us the most. And while it may sound like a cliche answer, in fact, it is the values that drive it, because, this kind of thinking has to come from the top.
Yeah.
The people who decide why we are in business, they have to drive this message all the way down. Otherwise, it can, if you add too much governance, it very easily can become, an exercise of adding red tape to it. And then then we are looking for loopholes in the system and trying to exploit the loopholes. So the message that needs to go is that it is clearly not something that you can also do. It is something that you must do. And like I said that unless and until it answers the question, what is in it for me? For example, if you were to tighten the rules or the framework so much in a particular industry that the business becomes unsustainable, then it is again harmful, because then it will cause the loss of employment, and the entire revenue generation goes away. So I think it is the values, but also I think it is very, very important, for example, to incentivize in the right manner. It need not necessarily be a very, I think an incentive will work far better than a framework or a rule, because then there is an inclination to do it. And it is very important to provide the right environment also to do it, so that the business remains sustainable for you to keep the environment sustainable.
Understand. Thank you. So you're more talking about the culture at the top and how is it organizationally embedded in the culture and the right incentives for the behavior. Makes sense. Surani, over to you.
Okay, so my opinion differs slightly. I think it's vital also to have policy driven by the government as well, because of the indiscipline at ground level. And I think that forces the companies to really look at sustainability as a whole. So like I said, whether it is for reporting purposes, whether it is simply because the law says the utilization, disposal, and so on. So I think a certain amount of policy is vital to get it embedded, because for me, I don't think a lot of our Asian countries, especially South Asian countries, it has really got embedded as such. So for the next few years, that policy is vital. What I've seen here in Sri Lanka, and I've also seen that in some of the other parts of the world, is that employees or the younger generation, the Gen Zs and the millennials actually don't want to join you unless you do have your company is sustainably driven or does believe it's not just a tagline, but actually the practices are in line with sustainable practices. And we found that competition is driving us as companies to become sustainable. So the younger generation is driving it. So I guess it's very similar to what Dhaval says. Yes, it is a bit of a culture shift, but the culture shift here and in some of the other parts of the world, I'm seeing it coming from the bottom, where the younger generations are forcing us as companies and entities to rethink. So for me, I think it's the best of both, or for me, I think it's vital. The countries do have a policy to force, but at the same time, build that culture where the generations coming through have understood the vitality or the importance of sustainability.
That's very interesting to note, that you're getting the drive and the push from employees and the environment, and that is sustainability is becoming a competitive advantage, not just in recruitment, but also in the way that our clients see us. So very refreshing to know that. And I think that's pretty much the way forward that we're seeing across the globe. Changing gears a little bit, sustainability is what you do in terms of a larger footprint. But what's happening more and more is that we're seeing shorter business cycles, and agility really matters to be sustainable. And you often hear of products that are released even before they have the capability to kind of test it. Prime example is the vaccinations across, right? I know it's a slightly debatable topic, but in a classic sense, vaccinations would have been tested for a longer period of time. Likewise, in a shorter and shorter the business cycle comes in our part of the world, especially in the corporate life cycle, you're releasing a lot of products without testing it. And it also means that there are new models that you would have tested, not tested before. Pandemic hit and work from home was like instantaneously switched on. And it was more a question of you work from home. Has that model been tested? Earlier, it used to be a test that we used to take to see, are your jobs kind of working remote kind of jobs? So there are two parts to it. One is, what does it mean for agility mean from your businesses in a customer context? And what does agility mean from an employee context? And both of them are quite relevant towards creating sustainable organizations. Question maybe, Vikas, I'll start with you.
Absolutely. I think the business cycles are becoming more and more shorter. I mean, earlier the product's life cycle or the business life cycle used to be pretty long. And once you've cracked the model, once you've cracked the good product in the market, you're rest assured that for the next 10, 15 years, you will continuously have your cash flows and margins and so on and so forth on the back of that product. Gone are the days. I think things are changing pretty rapidly, especially in the ecosystem or the business which I haven't come from, right? We are in a technology world, things are pretty fast, not only on the product side, but also the underlying technology. Technology is evolving so fast. Consumer preferences are evolving so fast. You have to think very, very fast, and you have to be agile in terms of the way you build the products, you roll out the products in the market. So more often than not, what we do in our business, we always, whenever we are testing grounds with new products or new thinking, we roll out that in a very, very pilot or a micro market or on a subset of customer, collect a lot of feedback, collect a lot of data, improvise wherever needed, and accordingly gradually roll that out to a larger audience. And I think that's one way of doing it. Second, a very important aspect of agility is, one is the entire process of rolling out. The second is being absolutely open to accepting your mistake and probably rolling it back as well. There are more often than not, you end up going ahead, believing in something and end up making certain mistakes. And agility means that you do not need, you're not required to stick to that for a long. If there is something wrong, just accept that, roll it back, take certain learnings, and make sure that you come out with much better product and much better thinking when you're coming out next. That is how we do it, not only from the external world perspective, not only from the consumer perspective, but also in the organization itself. So whenever we're talking about our people, our policies, we follow a very, very agile approach. And I think that is what the younger generation is, or the millennial or the Gen Z, what we call, their thought process is aligned to that concept. So I think that's the way to go to make businesses sustainable.
Thank you. Dhaval, your thoughts?
Yeah, so no, I completely agree with Vikas. And when we started the discussion, I said that one of the fundamental driving levers for sustainability is innovation. And I think innovation by nature demands agility.
Yeah.
Correct. And if you were to very simply ask what's agility, I think agility is your ability to react. So if you are able to react to your changing environment, be it controllable or uncontrollable, in a time-bound fashion and get the desired outcome, you're an agile organization. Correct. Now, you did mention a very pertinent point about, say, for example, the COVID vaccine, and like you rightly mentioned, there are two sides to the coin here. On an average, any drug discovery takes about a decade and about $1 billion of investment before it comes and hits the market. And even after that, it is slowly staged out and rolled out to the different markets, considering the kind of impact that it is expected to have. Now, should that conventional way be followed, or should we have been agile, where we cut down the cycle and say that, okay, this is the margin of tolerance that I'm willing to live with. I'm happy with what I've seen. Maybe it needs to meet 10 conditions, but I'm happy that it is meeting 8 of them well. Maybe it is not meeting one very well, and one I'm okay even if it doesn't meet. Right. So right, because then you're thinking about the larger good. You're talking about 7 billion people on earth here who stand a chance to get infected. How long can you wait? Right. So it becomes a question of speed versus accuracy sometimes. And sometimes accuracy has to take a backseat to speed. But then it is more an exception, because this entire scenario is an exception. So it should not be taken as a rule. I'm pretty certain that, where the effort is required, organizations are putting in that effort to the last T to ensure that, it is meeting particular standards. Maybe it is meeting the standards and it is doing what it is required to do, but is it doing it in a sustainable manner is a question that needs to be asked. And that's where, like you rightly mentioned, this entire new millennial that is and the new workforce that is coming to the fore is making that difference, which otherwise wouldn't happen. So, for example, if you were to take an index around the cities, I think the average level of littering has definitely come down from what it used to be. The average level of acceptance to do self, drive cleans, this has definitely come up from what it used to be. My kid today tells me that if you don't need a fan in a particular room, you should be switching it off. Right? He tells his mother that, okay, if you can do with 1 glass of water, why do you have to use 3 glasses of water to wash your vegetables? So definitely that awareness is there. It is about, honing that honing that and keeping it to that fundamental fact that yes, resources are depleting. It is not an unending supply that we are looking at here. And unless and until we are mindful of the fact that we can consume only so much, there will be very little left for the future. So I think that awareness has also increased manifold from what it was. So for example, today people are looking at how you can, what is the amount of electricity that you are spending to manufacture every unit of your product, and how it can definitely come down from, and if it is say for X, how you can bring it out to X minus delta X without affecting the output so much. So I think, yes, definitely there is that awareness, and like Vikas rightly mentioned, those with innovation, the industry may remain the same, the category there may remain the same, but the frequency with which the products will come out will definitely be much faster and much better.
Thank you. Surani, for concluding remarks on this particular topic.
Okay, so I think this pandemic or this crisis was a wake-up call for many, if not all. Overnight, companies lost their markets, their consumers, because overnight a need for a certain product went away. And that actually led to companies having to be very, very innovative to say, okay, fine, how do we survive this? How do we ensure that, we are still able to operate and make money? Profitability was vital. So this period actually gave companies an opportunity. You either innovate, you strive, you change, or else you will not be able to survive this period. So if I take again this period, what it did to us was that overnight, a lot of our Asian countries were not willing to work from home. For us, working from home, though we had all the technology at hand, was refusing to work from home because of our cultural norms and so on. But overnight, we had to change the ways we worked. And overnight, whether it is IT, whether it's manufacturing, that had to be innovative enough to be able to run companies from home. So I think going forward, this is, like I said, it was an eye-opener. And this is a brilliant eye-opener because as companies, we've realized we can't be doing the same thing over and over again. We have to be agile. And as Dhaval also mentioned, and because innovation is vital. And yes, we will see companies coming up with new products, trying it out. They will not have the testing opportunities. But with, again, a different generation of people having to cater to these different generations, they're not looking for, they themselves are not actually looking for that perfect product. So I think companies will need to push for innovation and agility, and we will see more of it from the way we work as well as the products that will come out and the services that will come out.
So maybe are you also looking at a shift in terms of employees? We spoke about an employee mindset. We spoke about the younger generation, Gen Z, coming in, and they're driving a lot of change, and consciousness being one of them, and talking about this is the right way to do things rather than saying is it profitable alone, right? So that's a different mindset of the millennium. But are you also seeing a shift in terms of what we used to call earlier in the generation, say, develop a core competency? That's the only way to be sustainable. In your workforce, you need to be known for something that you're really good at. But now it's more about, again, a shift from generalist to core competency to kind of talking about, can you do multiple things? And that's when you become more valuable. So what are you seeing in terms of your workforce? And what do you think are what's needed in terms of having the sustainable kind of workforce or organizations that are sustainable? What do they need to see in terms of their workforce? Some thoughts from you, and we will probably go around in the reverse order again.
I think one of the the newest, or I think the most vital, has been technology. Because more and more people have to not only learn to work with it, but it has become now BAU, and it has become vital. So technology or understanding technology and being able to work with technology has become important. And from a people point of view, this transition that we went through with the COVID and the lockdowns and so on was trying to get people ready to work with technology. As I mentioned before, we've always had all the technological platforms, whether it was manufacturing, whether it was SAPs and all the other technological platforms. We've always had it, but the usage or the utilization was not there because we've been flexible. So overnight, we've had to upskill people on utilization of technology. The second is to ensure that people as a whole are also resilient and agile. Gone are the days of doing a certain thing a similar way. Gone are the days that you have X number of people manning a line, because overnight a certain group of people will get quarantined and then you have to readjust and so on. So the areas for me that I find was vital to get people ready. And I think even going forward, I definitely see this for the next 2-3+ years. We'll definitely ensuring they are up to date in utilization of technology, ability to handle change, resilient and agile. So that's vital.
Dhaval?
So a couple of things here, Jaya, actually. So like Surani rightly mentioned, I think we keep talking about adaptability a lot. So, and with more and more technology getting used, people will have to move from human-centric ways of working to augmented intelligence-based ways of working. I wouldn't go to the extent of saying artificial intelligence ways of working, because it's not about elimination of the human intelligence.
Yeah.
It is more about how it works in conjunction with the artificial intelligence that is there. And especially with, if you talk about things like Industry 4.0, etc., coming to the fore, where you're talking about, the complete interoperability, you're talking about complete transparency, you're talking about complete technical assistance and decentralized decision making. That's where I think this entire gamut of being able to, let go of a piece of you and accept something else. I think that's extremely important. The second part with remote workforce coming into picture is definitely, I think, the work-life balance that is getting questioned a lot, actually, because there are early starts to the days and there are late endings to the day, and there is absolutely very little that you could do outside of it.
Yeah.
So how do you keep the employee engagement up? Not help to accelerate the burn, so to say, where they become bored of trying to contribute. So I think a lot of effort has to now go into remote employee engagement, remote employee morale management, remote workforce management, and rewards and recognitions which are aligned to the remote ways of working. Right? And most importantly, I think remote collaboration. That's I think so you're seeing a lot of technologies which are bringing collaborative platforms to the fore, where you can seamlessly work. So for example, today we would ideally have this chat somewhere in a ballroom of some organization, of some hotel somewhere. But the very fact that we are using this platform, and if you look at how these collaboration platforms have changed in the past 3 months alone, they provide this ability of polls and breakouts and different kinds of engagement. They provide lobbies and all these things, which they're trying to make this entire experience phygital, as they call it, digital, which comes as close to physical. So I think all of these factors, and again, I keep going back, it's only about everything about innovation today, where you're constantly at it to say that, okay, how can you change it? How can you make it better? So, and these, when you put in context of the entire employee engagement angle, and it's no longer an HR responsibility alone today, right? I'm not in HR, but managing my workforce or my immediate reportees and keeping their morale high is something that I get measured upon. So I think that's a new way of working which needs to be adopted very soon.
Thank you very much. Vikas, over to you.
No, Jaya, absolutely. I largely agree with what Surani and Dhaval has mentioned in terms of core. See, if we are expecting our businesses to evolve fast, if we are expecting the products needs to be rolled out in a much faster manner, I think the workforce also needs to be not sticking to only to the core competencies. I think core competencies are important, but they need to kind of keep on upskilling themselves, learning new things, and upgrading themselves along with the business or along with the technology and so on and so forth. And that's not applicable to a few segments of the organization. I think it's all across. It's not restricted to maybe the senior management or the middle management, but the junior employees as well. It's not only restricted to the tech folks or maybe the finance or HR folks, but also to the sales folks as well. Because if your products are evolving, the sales guy need to be evolving along with that so that they can go and make those presentations, sell those products, explain the capabilities which that product bring to the table to the customer. So I think that is super critical, but that doesn't take away the importance of core competencies. Core competencies will remain important, and that keeps you stick to what you do the best, right? And that is where you need to kind of build upon in terms of learning new things and growing within the organization. That's what I see.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for a very interesting panel discussion and the wonderful thoughts that came across. We discussed a lot. We talked about the culture of change. We talked about the culture of resilience. We talked about the culture of sustainability. We spoke about the importance of innovation, staying relevant, the Gen Z coming up with more a conscious culture and what it means to keep them in the workforce. What does it mean to look at newer norms in terms of shorter business cycles and remote working? And how do you keep the employee workforce engaged? And innovation being at the core of it. And most important, it's more about because it's the right thing to do and not because it's the necessary thing to do or because people are watching you, but it's more about do the right things the right way. Thank you very much for a wonderful session. I really enjoyed talking to you all. Thank you.